Hi, and welcome to this webinar on how to apply for a study permit for 2024. I'm your host, Charlotte, from the admissions office. So let's get started, and I will start off by sharing my screen. So welcome to Jönköping University. Congratulations on your admission. So we're going to talk about how to apply for a residence permit for study. And you can find the information on our website if you go through ju.se/en/admissions and then visa requirements, or the quick way, ju.se/study permit. The residence permit for study is also known as a study permit. So I will refer to it as study permit when we during this presentation. So, number one is, what are you admitted to? So that's the first thing. So what documents that you have to admit and when to apply for a study permit depends on what you have been admitted to. If it's a bachelor or a master program, or if it is pathway intensive English campus course with a follow-up bachelor or master program. Or the other option, the pathway intensive English online course with a bachelor or master program here in Jönköping. So when it comes to the online, pathway intensive online, that's the online course. So the study permit is for on-campus courses, but we'll get back to that later. So if you're admitted to a bachelor or master program, you need proof of paid tuition fee. You download the paid invoice from the payment system. I will show you that a bit more later on. You will need your letter of acceptance, and you receive that once. So you get the letter of acceptance, and then you get the invoice for the tuition fee. You don't get a new letter of acceptance after you've paid. This is the letter of acceptance that you have. You also need to show the migration agency that you have emergency health insurance, and that is your letter of acceptance. Fee-paying students at Jönköping University are covered by an emergency health insurance. Now, the extra health insurance is optional, mainly if you have a pre-existing condition, asthma, a heart condition, allergies, something that is not an emergency occurrence. So if you have a pre-existing condition, you might want to check into getting an extra health insurance from your home country for that. Now, if you're admitted to a 2-year master program or a 3-year bachelor program, or our 75 credit engineering management program, you will be able to apply for and get a Swedish personal identity number, and that will give you the health insurance cover the same as anyone else who's legally residing in Sweden has. Your passport should be valid for the duration of the residence permit dates or the duration of studies in Sweden, if it's a 1-year program. Because the migration agency can only grant a study permit as long as the passport is valid. You also need to have a bank statement in your name. It should be in English. The currency should be stated on there. And it should not be issued more than 4 months before the start of the permit period. And this is when you will be paying your living expenses out of your own pocket. And even if you have a bank loan that you've already received the money for. So the bank statement should also be, as I said, in your name. You can't share it with someone who's not coming to Sweden with you. So you should have access to that money. When it comes to if you're admitted to the Pathway Intensive English course plus Bachelor Master, pretty much the same documents, but you have 2 letters of acceptance. You have one for the Pathway Intensive English course and one for the follow-up program. So you need both. Proof of paid tuition fee, both. Again, you've received 2 invoices, so both. Same thing with emergency health insurance, passport, bank statement. So the only difference when you're doing the Pathway Intensive English course is that 2 paid invoices and 2 letters of acceptance. Now, when it comes to the invoice, the system holds your invoice and your payment is registered there. The due date is at the bottom of the PDF invoice. So it says due date, and in Sweden, the dates are written year, month, date. So 2024, and then the month, and then the date. Information onto how to activate an account to access the payment system is sent from both our IT department as well as a reminder from the payment system. So the invoice should be paid as soon as possible. International bank transfers could take up to 2 weeks to clear our account. And then an automated message will be sent to you when the payment has been registered. So the longer you wait to pay the invoice, the longer it takes before you can apply for a study permit, or before the application will be looked at, because the migration agency will only start after they have proof of payment. So any questions about the invoice or paying the invoice, the tuition fee, contact tuition@ju.se. This webinar is about how to apply for the study permit after you've paid the tuition fee invoice. So you need to download the paid invoice. So you log on to the payment system, you download the proof of payment. So once you've paid, it will say no invoices. And then under tuition fee periods here, you will be able to see your invoices by clicking on the PDF icon. And then you will get the invoice, which now says paid, this big green stamp. So that is what you should upload to your application for residence permit. If you're admitted to Pathway Intensive English campus, you should download both invoices. So then you click on the plus sign to open the one for Pathway Intensive English as well, and download that one as well. Key tips when you prepare to apply for a study permit. Note that an application that is missing any documents and have to be completed later will take longer to process. So if you send in your complete application, the migration agency will be able to process it faster than if they have to ask for more information. If your passport is about to expire, make sure you have extended it, as a study permit cannot be granted beyond the expiration date. Read up on the program that you're admitted to. Learn about the required classes on the program website. And you will be asked to give reasons for studying in Sweden, your motivation, and write them in your own words. Explain your plans for the future, what you hope to use the education for, how it will help you achieve your goals. So that is what you need to think about before you submit the application. A few common mistakes that causes the migration agency to ask for more information. If the application is incomplete, if something is missing, or if the bank account is in someone else's name or it's shared with someone who is not a spouse that is coming with you. So the bank account should be in your name. It's only if you, the student, is under the age of 18, then you can have a bank account, a joint bank account with a parent, because your parent will also have to tell the migration agency that they allow you to travel. But normally, if you're over 18, the bank account should be in your name. In case the bank statement is missing any information, like the date it was issued or the name of the account holder should be clearly written, or if it doesn't say what currency the account is in. If you have a scholarship or a grant for living expenses from your own country, and that document doesn't include the amount, or for instance, that the applicant can use the funds as they like, that could also be an issue. Note that partial tuition fee scholarships, that's not really of interest for the migration agency, because what they're looking at is that you can support yourself living expenses. Your passport should have all the pages necessary. Numbers and letterings at the top and the bottom must be visible. Now, sometimes for some countries, the signature is on a different page than the personal details. So you need to have the page of the photo and personal details as well as the signature page. So you have to get all of them. Another thing is, if you don't know what you're admitted to. So again, remember what you're admitted to and what you're planning to use the education for. So now we're ready to go and submit an application, right? So this is how you apply online. The website, the long version here, or you just go to this part, migrationsverket.se, and then when you get to the page, you click, it will say English, and then you find higher education down here, studying in Sweden and higher education. Now remember, if you can't apply online, because to apply online, you need to be able to pay the application fee through a card. So if you can't apply online, you should apply directly at the embassy or consulate. And then the application fee is paid there in cash. For instance, in Iran, you have to go to the embassy in Tehran and submit your application there, and then you pay the application fee in cash. But this page is has a lot of important information. So read through all of this before you start an application. And then the e-service is here. And when you click on apply there, you will be asked to log in. So if you've never applied before, you will be creating a new account. If you already have an account, you log in with that information. But if you're creating a new account, remember to have access to the email address that you provide. That is the address the migration agency will communicate with you through. Set a password and confirm it. And you have to check that you're not a robot. A code for verification will be sent to the email address. So you have 15 minutes to enter the code here, and then next step. They ask you to do a two-step verification. That means that you're using a phone number that a text message will be sent to with a verification code when you log in. So you should use a two-step verification, or you won't be able to go back and look at the information that you submitted later. It will just send the information and then you can't double check what you submitted. Note that a phone number can only be used one time for one account. So you can't have the same phone number for different accounts. That's important to remember. So then when you create the two-step verification, another verification code is sent to your phone, and it's valid for 5 minutes. And then you enter the code there, click next, and your account is created. And we're gonna apply for a residence permit for studies in higher education. So it's a first permit. You click next. And then the next step will be you fill in your personal information, your name, birth date, address, citizenship, marital status, and then you click next. The next is your address and things like that. Next again will be information about your travel document. So your passport, upload a copy of your passport. And then you click next, and then you get to this one, where you're going to contact the Swedish embassy. So this is a drop-down box. So then you choose the one closest to you, either in your country or the closest one to your country. Now, on all of these pages at the bottom, it says continue at another time. That means that you can pause your application and go back in another time. So when you started the application, you received an email with this information that you've started it, and it will be removed within 14 days if it's not been submitted within them. And then a link how to get back to the application. So when you're in the application, you click continue at another time, this comes up, and then you can resend it to your email again if you don't remember if you deleted it or what. But you need to have this link to be able to go back. And then you can download a copy of the application once it's been submitted, but it will stop working 30 days after the application is finally submitted. So the next thing they're going to ask you is if you have applied for permission to visit or stay in Sweden before. Visa, residence permit, work permits, or whichever. So you say here yes or no. If you have applied for a permit before and you click yes, this will come up and it will ask you to enter a case number, but this is optional. So if you don't remember that, you can leave this blank and just click next. Then they're going to ask you if you have a valid residence permit in another country right now. You answer that. And they're also going to ask you if you've visited any countries in the Schengen area other than Sweden in the past year. So yes or no. The next thing is they're asking you where you are now. So if you're residing in Sweden now or not. And you should be saying no to this unless you are in Sweden. If you're in Sweden, yeah, the first time applying for first time study permit, you have to be outside of Sweden. Otherwise, it's otherwise you're applying for an extension, or if you're changing your status, you're going to have to leave Sweden temporarily. A study permit can only be granted, a first-time study permit can only be granted if the student is not in Sweden at the time. Now here's the important information. The application period. This is something everybody has questions about. So this is where they ask you to enter the dates, the start date and end date. So this is for the period you want to apply for the residence permit for. So the dates on the permit. Now, studies that start in August, you are allowed to enter 1st of August as the starting date. And so for 1-year master programs, the end date here should be the date that it's stated in your letter of acceptance as the end date. If you're doing a 2 or 3-year program, this end date can then be 12 or 13 months. So you can do it for 13 months after the start date. So if you put 1st of August here, then count 13 months. And then it's 1st of September the following year here. Now, if you're admitted to Pathway Intensive English Campus course, the campus course, this start date should be the date on the letter of acceptance for the course, which is 15th of July. And then you can do the end of the 1-year program or 13 months later if you're doing a 2 or 3 year. If you're studying the pathway intensive online, you can treat this as just the bachelor or master studies. So focus on that. You could still apply for a permit that starts on August 1st, but not earlier. So an online course is not something that you can have normally have a residence permit for study for. When you click next, then what you're studying will be university or university college. So that's undergraduate or master level. And that you're admitted to a university program or a university course. The next question is if you're admitted to distance learning. So you can only be granted study permit for campus studies. And then they will ask you if you've paid the tuition fee, the fee for the entire first semester. That is what we call the first installment of the program fee. So when you click yes here, you're then gonna enter how many higher education credits are in your program. So that number is stated on your letter of acceptance. So just read there. If it's a 3-year bachelor, it's 180 credits. If it's a 2-year master, it's 120. But yeah, it says on the letter of acceptance. Now, if you're admitted to Pathway Intensive English Campus course, add the 7.5 credits to the total number. So then you should write, for instance, in this case, 127.5 credits. So this is the total that the total of credits that you will be applying for a permit for, including any extensions later on. Then you're gonna write down what you're admitted to. In this case, we said it's the program Master of Digital Business. Then you find Jönköping University in this drop-down box. So you click there, drop down, and find Jönköping University. And this is where you attach your acceptance letter. And if you're admitted to Pathway Intensive English Campus course, as well as a program, add both. Upload both letters here and add the name Pathway Intensive English Campus to the program name. For instance, this way, Pathway Intensive English Campus course plus Master of Digital Business. But if you're not admitted to a pathway course, it's just the program as it's stated on your letter of acceptance. And here it shows you what you have entered. You can edit the program name here. Then you can add the Pathway Intensive English online course. You could do that, but when you add that, you have to state that that is a distance learning for that specific course. And you shouldn't apply for study permit for that time. Again, not before 1st of August. Then you come to the reason for your studying. So this is where you explain why you want to study this program in Sweden and what you plan to use the education for. Some students have help from a consultant to do this, but try to use your own words. The migration agency will notice if they're the same template. And that means if everyone has the same template, you're most likely going to be required to do an interview, and they're going to ask you more questions about your reason for studying. So this is something that you should write in your own words, and you should know what you're planning to do with the education that you've been admitted to. The next step will ask about current occupation and previous education. Now, the previous education, you should write down the school, the name, if it's a high school or if it's a university, the type of education, the name, and how long it was, perhaps, and then the date that it ended. Work experience, that's only if you have worked. If you just finished high school and never worked, then you can just skip through this. But if you have worked between you graduated from high school and you went on to college, or between your bachelor studies and what you're now admitted to, you should put down what work experience you have. So where you were employed, what you were doing, and when you stopped working there. The next section will be about your finances. So this is how you're going to support yourself while you're studying. So this is all about the living costs. They're not asking about the tuition fees. They're going to ask about the living costs. So this is where they first ask if you have a scholarship. In this case, what they're asking is if you have a scholarship from Sweden. So if you click yes here, this is the list that you get. And in this case, other scholarship is if you have a scholarship from Sweden that covers living expenses. So for instance, the JU scholarship is a tuition fee scholarship. So it doesn't cover living expenses, and it doesn't have to be listed here. And also, if you do have a scholarship, but from your home country, this is not where you should put this. This is only for Swedish scholarships. And the SI, Swedish Institute Scholarship, is for if a student has been admitted through university admissions to a master program and received the SI scholarship. That's where they put that later on. But if you don't have a scholarship from a Swedish organization that covers living expenses, you should put no here. Because then you get to this point where you will be showing that you can support yourself. So for 2024, the amount is 10,413 Swedish kronor. Here you click add to upload information, for instance, a bank statement, your own bank assets, and then you have to upload the bank statement. You might have a scholarship from your home country. So this is where you put that. You might have a sponsor. Now, sponsor here means an organization or a company. The migration agency doesn't accept private individuals as sponsors. So if you're being sponsored by a private individual or several private individuals, you have to get the money and put them in your own bank and say bank assets, because sponsor is only organization or companies. So then you're going to enter the total amount that you have in your bank here, and then what currency. So they're also they're giving you an example that how to convert to make sure that you have money for the time that you're applying for a residence permit. So if you're applying for 13 months, you should have 10,413 Swedish kronor times 13 months. If it's a 1 year master that ends actually after 10 months, it should be 10 months times 10,413. So once you've written that in there and click next, you can upload proof of your finances. So for instance, the bank certificate. Again, you can go back and upload these later on. You can start your application and then you go to the bank and then you get the bank statement and then you go back and you upload the file. Again, that's what this continue at another time is for. The next two parts will be about cost of food and accommodation. Now, you will be paying rent and other living expenses once you've arrived, so you should click no for both of these. Pathway Intensive English on campus is a 4-week campus, so it's 1 month where food and accommodation is prepaid. So it's basically just 1 month. So if you have more questions about that, send us an email and ask more about that later on. The email address is at the end of this presentation. If you are bringing your spouse and or children, this is where you then enter about your co-applicant. The co-applicant or co-applying children. And questions about this you have to ask the migration agents. Other information that you might think is important for the Swedish Migration Agency to know is what you're supposed to put here. This could be where you state that you are studying the online pathway intensive online, or the engineering management program has an online course that starts, but you should have that information as well. You can upload that along with your letter of acceptance if it's not already stated there. So anything you think the Swedish Migration Agency should know is what we put here. So that's why it's optional. It's not a requirement to put anything there. It could also be if the spelling of your name is different in your letter of acceptance from what is stated on your passport. There could be translation changes. And this is also why it could be different from passport and other educational documents and things like that. So that is another piece of information that could be put here just to make them aware that your name can be spelled in a few different ways. So when you get here and you click next, that is where you will see an overview, and you can go into it and change your answers if you see an error, or, oh yeah, this is where I need more documents uploaded, and you do that. And then you can download the draft as a PDF. Then once you're done with the application and you say, okay, all my documents are uploaded, you click next, and then you pay the application fee according to the instructions. The application fee is 1,500 Swedish kronor right now. And once you've paid the application fee and submitted the application, you cannot go back and change anything. So make sure you double check everything before you go to the payment option. So what happens after you've submitted your application? You'll need to visit the Swedish Embassy or a Consulate General to show your passport in original. You need to have your photo taken and fingerprints collected. And you might be called for an interview. To avoid unnecessary travels, try to book the interview at the same time as the passport check and photo and fingerprints. And that's, so you don't have to travel too many times. If you do not need an entry visa to enter Sweden, you might be able to travel to Sweden once you receive the decision, and you can submit biometrics after arrival. But you have to check with the Swedish Embassy closest to you for that information. And the Swedish Migration Agency will also contact you if they require you to visit the Swedish Foreign Mission, another name for embassy or consulate general. So they will tell you, they might also tell you that, yeah, you also need an entry visa for this. Travel to Sweden only after you've been granted the residence permit for study. If you need an entry visa, you must also wait for the permit card before you can travel to Sweden. So if you're from a country that doesn't require an entry visa, you need to have received the decision that you've been granted residence permit for study before you can travel. If you need an entry visa, you have to wait for the next thing, which is the permit card, which will also be your entry visa. And it could take up to 4 weeks to receive the card after the decision. So additional information, the residence permit for study, it allows you to work legally in Sweden, but keep in mind, you are expected to study full-time. Full-time is about 40 hours per week. There might not be classes or lectures scheduled for that many hours because you're supposed to do a lot of work on your own or in study groups. But 40 hours per week is what you're expected to focus on your studies for. Also note that finding a part-time job could be difficult if you don't know any Swedish. So it might take a while to find a part-time job. So it's not easy to get the extra money. also note that after the first semester, the migration agency might contact you and ask you to prove that you still have the remainder of the living expenses fundings that you showed when you applied. So that's why it's important to remember that the money that you're showing that you can support yourself, that is for your living costs. The tuition fees is separate according to the migration agency. So you need to be able to pay your tuition fee as well as having the living expenses funded as well. So if you have questions about this, admissions.office@ju.se, that is the email address that you can send your questions to.